My girlfriend told me like 2 weeks ago that she was waiting in line at the convenience store with her friend in Chinatown, New York, and this large, dapper-looking man came over to them. He complimented her coat and commented on how expensive it must be. She said, "Thank you," and they chatted for a little longer. The man explained how his suit was just a crappy Brooks Brothers suit, but she noticed that he had all sorts of expensive jewelry on. When my girlfriend and her friend explained that they were students, he kept making assumptions about how they must be rich and that their parents were paying for everything. My girlfriend was starting to feel uncomfortable and began trying to distance herself from the man. He asked them if they had jobs and they told him no, as they were students. After this, he went on to tell them what he did for a living without being asked. He said, "I do all sorts of odd jobs, this and that. I mainly have these guys that work for me though. I find them off the streets and feed them and give them a place to stay. I'm waiting to meet up with them right now." He referred to them as his minions, which made something at first seeming wholesome very unsettling all of a sudden. He then told them that he had just had his wallet stolen and needed $400 for something. I don't remember the reason. He told them that he could pay them back later that week, but that he needed the money that night. My girlfriend politely declined and at this point was really uncomfortable. She started walking towards the door to leave and said, "Nice to meet you and good luck." They both walked outside and sat on a bench outside of the convenience store. As they were sitting and discussing the strange interaction, they saw the man exit and stand outside about 10 feet away, waiting for a few minutes, looking at his phone. He then met up with the other two and they chatted for a few minutes. The large man in the suit then walked the other direction, and the two other men walked into the store and started holding it up with knives. Absolutely shocked and frozen, they both watched as the cashier put her hands up and then emptied out the register. The two men ran out of the store in the same direction as the man in the suit had walked. We were both about to call the police but saw that the cashier already had. We waited at the bench until the two police cars showed up and then we walked in to tell the officers what we had just witnessed, and we tried to help them identify the robbers and the man that we had just met. I wonder if this is a common thing in terms of organized crime. Not really sure, but it was a scary experience. This takes place in 2016 and 2017. I was born in the year of 2000, so I was like 16 or 17. I worked at a popular chain restaurant as a hostess. We had a high turnover rate, so we constantly had new people working there. The bar was pretty low on who we would hire. Anyway, one day this guy comes in, mid-40s, probably around 5'9" and an average build. He had a small gap between his teeth and emotionless eyes. Dark gray/brown hair, a bit of a comb-over. He's wearing a Hawaiian-style button-up shirt and khaki cargo shorts. He asked to talk to the manager, Michael, a good friend of mine. After about 30 minutes of the two talking, the man shakes Michael's hand and leaves. We joked that he looked like the stereotypical serial killer. Well, he had no job background to talk about really, just that he's from California and that he used to work the streets. He's having his second interview on Tuesday, so I guess we'll see what happens, Michael says to me. We both made jokes for the next couple of days about the serial killer coworker that we were sure we would soon have. Even after he was hired, it was a running joke amongst everyone. His name was John. On the surface, he was okay. Maybe a little inappropriate at times and touchy-feely with the girls, including myself. But everybody just said, "Oh, that's just how he is. He doesn't mean anything by it." I said that too. Looking back, it's weird how we just let him get away with the borderline crappy stuff that he did. I can recall several times that he grabbed me by the waist, called me sexy, and even made sexual noises anytime I entered the room. I was around 16, and I don't even working there for about 6 months. I had become close with most of the staff at that point, even the new guy John. He was a little weird to everyone, but especially to me. It was like he had some kind of fascination. In the back of my mind, I thought that I should stay on his good side, just in case he was as creepy as he acted. But when he invited us all to the barbecue at his house, I went. I didn't want any reason for him to dislike me. Maybe that's because I'm a people pleaser. Or maybe it was the feeling in my gut. It was me, Michael, his girlfriend, 3 children, and Justin. John told me to get there around 4, and so I did. And when I arrived, I realized that I was the first one there. I always get to places early, so I figured that everybody else would be there soon. He lived in a nice neighborhood, and from what it seemed, he was pretty well off. A nice house, 2 cars, a boat even. I'm greeted by John at the front door, and he welcomes me in with a hug. "You're here. The others should be here soon. Want to help me cook the burgers? I'm vegetarian, so I have no idea how to do this." He chuckled. We all thought that it was weird when he had invited us to a barbecue because of the fact that he didn't eat meat. He made that clear at the restaurant when anybody would offer him a boneless wing or a piece of steak. I just figured he wanted an excuse to have some people over. He lived alone after all. He told us that he had a girlfriend in Germany and he was previously married in California. He had 3 kids, 1 was an adult at this point, and the other 2 must have been between 4 and 8 years old. I had met his children before when they came to visit him at work. The oldest took care of the 2 younger kids. She was deaf, which I thought was interesting, because I had never met a deaf person before. She seemed like she really didn't like John, and only came to see him when she was dropping the 2 young ones to visit him for the weekend. He didn't have custody of either of them, and usually only saw them once every couple of months. "Sure, but I'm not a very good cook," I replied, giving him a forced smile. I had never been alone with him before, and I was getting more uncomfortable by the second. "Well, first I should give you a tour, come on." He grabbed me by the hand and ushered me outside. He had a good-sized backyard. It had a privacy fence, not 1 but 2 small sheds and a garden. "So that's where you dismember people and you put them in the garden, don't you?" I joked, looking back at him. He just smiled. John had caught on to the serial killer jokes at work rather quickly, but he thought that it was funny. He would often joke about hiding dead bodies, and I would usually play along. I don't know why I did. I think I really did feel like it was just an inside joke. "Hey, you got me. Why do you think the veggies grow so well?" he had said in a joking voice while walking towards the garden. "Ex-wives make excellent fertilizer." After a while, we went back into the kitchen and he told me to put on an apron. I did because he said it more like an order than a suggestion. "You look so sexy in that here. Let me take a picture to send it to the girls. You know they love you, right?" He pulled out his phone. Smile. At this point, I started to realize that I had been there for at least an hour and no one else was there yet. I sent a quick text to Michael asking him when he would be getting there. He replied with, "John told us to be there at 6. Are you there already?" I gulped. Why would he tell me to get there 2 hours before everyone else? "Hey, Shay, come sit with me. Sit in this chair." John called from the living room, so I did. He patted the back of the recliner, as to let me know that that was my spot. I sat down and he sat down on the couch across from me. I guess now would be a good time to mention that John owned several guns and he usually had 1 strapped to his hip. I mean, no big deal, this is Texas. It's pretty normal for people to own guns. But he had unstrapped his gun and he was looking at it, toying with it. "Do you want a drink?" he asked, gesturing to the beer in his hand. No thank you, I don't really like beer," I replied, probably looking uncomfortable at this point. "I think I'm going to text Michael to hurry up. I've got a 16-year-old and a gun." He chuckled as he typed away at his phone. I thought that he was joking until Michael had texted me, asking if everything was okay and saying that he would be there soon and to sit tight. About 20 minutes later, everyone had shown up and Michael made it a point to mouth, "Are you okay?" to me, and I nodded. John was only joking after all, right? The night went on, still weird but not quite as bad as before. Justin and John made quick work of cooking and the rest of us just sat at the table, including Michael's kids. He had 2 boys and 1 girl, and his girlfriend was named Megan. Soon John had fixed up some cocktails for all of us, even me. I hardly touched it, but when Megan finished hers, she got up to get a refill. And this is when it got weird. "Sit down," John demanded, standing up from his spot at the table. She just looked at him, confused. "I'm getting a refill. I'll get it for you. You're the guest. Sit down," he said, a bit more calm than before. He grabbed her cup and went back into the kitchen to fill it up. We all just kind of looked at each other. We made quick work of eating, even though the burger was almost raw in the middle. At some point, John had started talking about his kids and how he missed them. And that's when he told Michael's daughter to come sit on his lap. She was a sweet little girl, and so she did. "I love you," John told her, tearing up. "Say it back." So she did, and he started bawling. He was rambling about being so happy that he had friends and he wished that we all could just stay there forever. We were all quiet except for Justin, who was totally oblivious to everything going on. He just kept munching away at his burger. As everybody was getting ready to leave, my mom pulled up to come and get me. John quickly pulled us both into one of his sheds, sitting us both down. My mom just looked at me confused. "Thank you so much for letting your daughter be my friend. It means so much to me. I know it's kind of weird since I'm old and she's still a kid, but it makes me so happy." He just kept repeating this in different variations for about 10 minutes until my mom said, "Okay, we're leaving now," and we both started heading for the car. Michael and Megan were still there, looking slightly relieved to see us. Later, I found out that John had ordered them to wait until he came back to leave. They wanted to leave as soon as he had stepped into the shed, but they didn't want to leave us, and Justin had already left. But once they saw us emerge, they got into their car and started strapping the kids into their car seats. John followed me and my mother to our car, and stood in the way of the open driver's side door as soon as my mom had buckled up. "Please don't leave," he said, still blocking us from closing the door. Eventually, he left after we made up excuses about how it was getting dark and that we had to go. Later, I had heard from Michael that John came back from our car and told him, and Megan, that my mom was crazy and wouldn't let him leave from our car, and that she must have been on drugs. A few months later, me and another coworker had planned on seeing a movie after work together. He was also named Michael, but because that's confusing, we'll call him Logan. Logan had about an hour more of his shift left, and I decided to wait at one of the empty tables and eat some lunch. As I sat there, John came into the restaurant, presumably to get his check, because we all had to pick up our checks from the manager. He noticed me sitting alone and took the opportunity to sit down next to me. Shay, what are you doing?" he exclaimed with a big smile on his face. "I'm waiting for Logan. We're going to see a movie together after he's finished with his tables," I replied, giving him a forced smile. "Why don't you come wait at my house? I'm sure you don't want to stay here any longer than you have to." He leaned in, never taking his eyes off of me. "He's going to be done soon. I might as well just wait here," I replied, trying to convince him to leave me alone. He didn't leave me alone, and he begged me to come with him. And since I have a hard time saying no to people, I agreed. I let Logan know what was going on. He seemed concerned, but he said, "Yeah, alright, I'll be there soon." Michael and I had already told Logan about our weird experience with him before, so he knew that John was a weirdo. Once we got to John's house, he gave me a glass of orange juice and vodka. "I'm not supposed to drink, I'm only 16. I reminded him, but he persisted. "Oh, come on, relax, I'm not going to do anything. Here, you can hold this." And that's when he handed me a gun. "Hey, don't worry, it's loaded." He smiled at me. I had never held a gun before, and I definitely didn't want to hold it. It was all very uncomfortable and weird. "Here, sit down right here, you can help me with my puzzle," he told me, pulling a bench out by a small table. God, you look so sexy with that thing. I sat down at the table trying to ignore his comments, and I sat the gun down and began working on the half-finished puzzle. John put my screwdriver down next to the gun. I was right next to a window, and as I looked outside, I realized that it was raining. Logan had texted me that he was on his way, and I was just glad that I would get to leave soon. John was sat on the couch with several guns and a lot of ammunition sitting on the coffee table in front of him. From what I could tell, he was cleaning them, but the way that the room was set up, he had his back facing me. Logan eventually showed up, and we had about 20 minutes until the movie started. "Hey, well, we better get going," Logan said, motioning for me to follow him. But just as I got up, John pointed to the kitchen. "Well, why don't you stay for a drink? You have time before the movie starts, right?" Before either of us could protest, he patted the spot next to him, getting up and soon returning from the kitchen with a mixed drink for Logan. "Yeah, just one, I guess," he agreed, which turned into two, which turned into three. Not by Logan's choice, but because John was so insistent. "Okay, the movie just started. If we get there fast, we might make it before the commercials end." Logan got up, grabbing his keys. "You really think you should drive right now? Logan, you've been drinking." John chuckled at taking the keys out of his hand. "Just stay here for a while. It would feel awful if you got into an accident." "Please," he begged. Logan and I traded a concerned look before sitting back down. "Okay, we'll stay until the next showing, I guess," I said to them both, forcing a smile. "Do you guys want to see something?" John asked, and we nodded hesitantly. He brought out a small safe and struggled to unlock it for about 10 minutes. He even made me try because he liked me watching struggle to open it up. "I'm gonna make you too rich, look," he said once we finally got it open. The safe was full of $2 bills, $1 coins, and cool stuff, but nothing of real value. He handed us both 2 Sacagawea coins each, claiming that they would put us through college. Neither of us were buying it, but we went along with it, thanking him. My father collected coins, so I knew a small amount of information about them, and I assumed that John was just confused. And then he pulled out a Nebraska Centennial gun. It was gold-plated and had a mother-of-pearl handle. He pointed it at the wall and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. "Whoops, glad that wasn't loaded," John chuckled before putting it down and using his hands to spread the coins in various forms of currency around the table. He did that for a while, scooping up coins and letting them fall between his fingers. "You guys should go get some drugs. I don't care anything," John told us, his eyes widened. Logan and I saw that as an opportunity and took it. "Yeah, sure, we'll go do that. We'll be back soon," Logan replied, grabbing his keys. Once we got into his car, we both breathed a sigh of relief. We decided to go to Michael's house to tell him about all the weird stuff that had just happened. We got there, and after telling him everything, Michael got a message on his phone. "It's from John," he said slowly. He said, "Don't trust them. They're liars and bad people. They're evil and they're using me." Me and Logan just looked at each other. "Us? Is he talking about us?" I asked, getting concerned. "Yeah, I think so. He keeps repeating the same thing. I got like 15 texts from him." Michael told us, showing us the screen. "Ah, crap," Logan said, his eyes getting wide. "I forgot my phone at his house." Me and Michael looked at each other. "Do you want us to go with you? What do we do?" Michael asked. "Go and say that my mom wanted me home, and so you ended up dropping me off in my house, but you forgot your phone. Say that we couldn't find any drugs for him, and we looked for a while. That's why it took so long. We couldn't call him up to let him know because you left your phone and mine is out of service." I instructed, trying to come up with the best excuse that I could. Logan left, and after about 40 minutes later, he came back. He's literally crazy. I got there, gave him an excuse, and got my phone. He was just sitting in the chair looking at me, and then he got up and hugged me, and he wouldn't let me go for like 10 minutes. He kept saying that he loves me and that I'm his best friend. Logan told us, and we all decided that there's something wrong with John. We never went back to his house, but John began acting weird at work, erratic, jumping from happy to sad randomly. He quit a few months later, and the last we heard was that he had moved to Tennessee. I looked him up on a mugshots website and found an arrest record. It was from 2013. The charge was listed as attacking someone. The most prominent conversation I remember having with him was when he said that he wished me and him could run off together, rob banks, kill people, and have a lot of sex, in his words. He said that I could be the Bonnie to his Clyde, that I'm the woman of his dreams. I was 16.